Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome back to our UDL era video series. Myself and my friend and colleague, Dana Sheehan, are here to welcome you. We haven't done one of these in quite some time, but this is another COVID pandemic episode for you. And we do have the wonderful Dr. Matt Connell here with us today. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself to the crew out there?
Thanks so much for having me today. I am Dr. Matt Connell, the program director for the business administration program here at Goodwin University, as well as faculty in the business administration.
I think one of the most amazing things about being able to do this video series during the COVID pandemic is the people that we're actually able to get into these interviews right now, because we never would have been able to get Matt if we were all on ground, because he's always in a million meetings and teaching and just all over the place. But we lucked out, and he's at home and we're at home. We're so excited to have you here with us today, Matt, and it's just been so wonderful to hear all the things that you've been doing. We're just wondering if you could just take a minute and maybe go back to the beginning a little bit and talk about what drew you to Universal Design for Learning in the first place.
To be honest, when I first heard of Universal Design for Learning, I had a conversation with Diana LaRocca, who is like the guru of UDL, especially on campus, but also probably at this point nationwide. And I asked her, because my background is also in special education, I asked her, how is this different than special ed, like differentiation in the special ed world? And we got into this conversation about how in special ed, the teacher looks at what the barriers the students are bringing to the classroom, or what are the access points that they're struggling to meet. Whereas UDL really reverses that and asks you as the instructor to say, well, what are you doing within your environment that is obstructing student learning and student knowledge? And I love that because I think that I am only one person, right? Like, I don't have all the answers to anything. I have very few answers to anything, actually. So, but like, and so I look at my classroom of learners as worthy, like, knowledge points of people that I can learn something from and that can learn something from each other. And so I started to think about it in that sense. Well, how do I get more of that, where they're interacting and learning from each other, and I'm just like stepping back and helping guide conversations?
Karrie was telling me that you have this program. It's called the ENET program.
ENET is the Entrepreneurial Network Program. Right now, it is grant funded. It is focused on individuals that are or have been justice involved. So we work with students that either were incarcerated, or in this current cohort, we've got students that were incarcerated and students that are currently incarcerated. There are a lot of barriers, right? There are a lot of obstacles to reaching academic success when you haven't been in school in a number of years, when you're lacking technology resources or abilities. And so I started to look at this program and say, well, what are we doing that's perpetuating these barriers for these students, right? Like, how can we make the classroom more accessible?
It sounds like you have definitely started answering some of the questions that we actually asked, which is, how has UDL started to change your classroom? So we don't need to ask that one, right. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to add to how UDL has helped to change this specific kind of classroom for you.
I really use UDL in the classroom in the sense of, and I might be using the term wrong, but like, I call it a flipped classroom, right? I believe that as a faculty member, as an instructor, like, we should be guides on the side. We should be allowing our students to bring forth their knowledge and interact, because students are going to hear the same information I'm trying to convey differently if one of their colleagues here says it, and it might be a different vernacular. It just might be that it's somebody else saying it, right? Like, and so I've really, not just within the ENET program, but like any class I teach, like, I flip it. Like, I go in there and I'm like, look, I am not going to talk in this class. Like, if I lecture for 20 minutes, like, that's all you're getting. The rest is guided conversation and group work, where you're going to be expected to come back and present as a team. And I'm just a member of the audience, right? Like, asking questions.
So Dana and I, throughout the course of creating these video series, we've always talked about a +1. So one lesson, one goal, one lecture, something, one particular activity that you chose to UDLize, something in particular. Can you talk a little bit about one activity with us today?
For example, like in the small business and entrepreneurship class, right? So BUS 150. The big project was a business plan. Like, here's the components of a business plan, write the business plan, potentially present it, but really it was about the business plan. And I sat back and I was like, the business plan is great, but like individual students really need to be able to talk through their business and become concise in that conversation. So literally, like if you are in, regardless of whether it's part of the ENET program or the associates, it doesn't matter. Like the majority of what we do is work on pitching our businesses. So like the students will pitch, the other students will come in and constructive criticize, and I will give some pointers or ideas. And like I say to the students, you know, all the time, I'm like, I'm just one person. Look, like take my ideas, don't take my ideas. Like business is like life. Like you could do everything I say and still it doesn't work out, or you could do the complete opposite of what I say and get it right. So I'm just a guide, right? And so that to me is really the plus one, is like taking that main activity of the business plan and really making it so that it's student centered, that it's become student focused, and the students are constantly working on it as a group together.
I love that you keep bringing it back to the flipped classroom, how you're not the one that's always leading everything. You're part of everything, but you're letting the students lead it, which I think is a wonderful way to get the students to take control of what they're doing. I think it's a fantastic way to be able to do it. And it takes a lot. People think that it might be super easy to be like, oh, just let the students talk all they want, but no, you have to really work hard to keep the students on track. So being able to do the flipped classroom in the way that you're doing it is awesome and challenging. So I mean, lots of stars on the fridge.
Thank you.
But
I never got those as a kid, so I'll take them now. That's cool.
Put them right in the mail.
I'm putting them on my mom's refrigerator.
Right. So one of my questions is, so this business plan that they're doing, is this something that, are they given this assignment at the beginning of the semester and then they kind of scaffold working on it throughout the entire semester?
Yeah, exactly. So I believe in scaffolding so that the final assessment is chunked out almost any class I teach, right? Like I'm not personally, like no judgment if that's how you do it, but like I'm not somebody that, like, I don't like to give a big assignment week 6 of a class and be like, it's due in a week. Like I like to like have a big assignment that's chunked out. So every week they work on 1, 2, depending on the sections that they're working on, upwards of 3 sections of the business plan, but no more than 3, and sometimes just like 1. And it's not like, you know, when I say business plan, just for anybody out there that knows the world of business planning, like this is not a 40-page document that you would bring to an SBA lender. This is a business plan that you would bring to friends and family or an angel investor, somebody that's not looking for repetitive information being said the same way over and over again in different sections. This is, you know, a 10 to 12 page business plan.
Just to add to that question, how are you finding the students doing with the flipped classroom and having you be more on the side, coaxing them instead of being in front of the room lecturing all the time?
At first, it's a little bit of a shock to students, especially if they've taken other classes, to be honest, you know, depending on the class that they're in or the level. If they've never had a class with me before, and they're used to more of the lecture structure, they kind of are like, what's going on? But like once they get used to it and once they understand, like, this guy is not talking, you know what I mean? Like we're not getting like just straight lecture from him. They get into it, right? Like, and they really like appreciate the small group work and having to present on a weekly basis. Like everybody talks weekly, whether it's part of the group conversation or because it's part of like your presentation. Like every class of mine, like you are talking, like that is where it's at. And so I think they get used to it, and you know, the feedback is like, wow, that was awesome. I really got to know my fellow students. I really felt like I was heard and supported, and I got over like my anxiety about talking in public, right?
That was something else I wanted to bring up, because I find too, when I have the students constantly doing things in the classroom and talking all the time, that they are like, I didn't realize I was going to get more comfortable speaking in public by taking this blah, blah, blah course. So yeah, I was going to ask you, but you already answered that.
I know. My next question too was, how does it help students learning? And he kind of jumped the gun on that one too. So Matt, you're like a pro at this. Thank you so much. Making it
Sorry.
very easy for us.
Sorry. It really does, I think, help the students in so many different ways, right? Because for anybody that's ever, whether you're a parent or you've interacted with kids, right? For anybody that's like tried to explain something to somebody and they don't get it the first time, so you try to explain it a second and a third time, like you're still the same person trying to explain it. What makes you think that by saying the same thing 3 or 4 times is going to change the result of how they hear it? Is kind of like banging your head against the wall in my mind. Whereas, like I said earlier, like this provides, like, if I'm like struggling to convey a point, I'll be like, hey, Dana, what do you think this means? And then you say it, and then all of a sudden Karrie's like, oh, I got it now. That makes sense, right? And so I really do think that it's, again, like I'm just one person. Like it'd be pretty ridiculous for me to think I could like reach all people all the time and have enough knowledge to do so comprehensively.
We were talking last night, actually, in my ECE class last night, and they were talking about how like learning styles and things are as different as people's fingerprints. And I like the way that they made that analogy. And we had a whole discussion about it in my class last night. And that's exactly right. So everybody is very different. Everybody has a unique style. Everybody learns things different ways. So that speaks volumes to the work that you're doing over in the business administration program.
With the ENET program, there are some people that are still in prison that are coming to you through the computer screen, like through Zoom or whatever. And some students are coming in on ground. So it's kind of, COVID or no COVID, you're still getting a bit of a mixed classroom with who like how people are showing up. And I'm curious how that's working for you with getting all the students to talk to each other.
So they have class together at the same time. And they do a great job, right? Like, so if we do small groups or breakouts, like then the guys like at the correctional facility are one group, and then we break out the other group, or like we'll have like the guys at the correctional facility as one group because they're in on one Zoom link, and then the other students that are in through Zoom will be another group, and then the on-campus students will be another. But just to throw another twist with the ENET program, we actually have students that for various reasons can't always make it to every class. So we also record all the classes too. So they can listen like asynchronously and do their work. So we're like kind of all over the place with the accessibility in that regard.
Now I'm so intrigued. I know Karrie and I are going to try to talk you into doing a special edition where we can just kind of talk about all of the changes that you've been doing within the business program, because I know it's been a lot. But I was wondering if you have just something that you've been kind of working on and starting to like think about, like your next UDL +1 that you've been wanting to incorporate.
I'm always working with the grants team who is unbelievable to try to expand the ENET program. And expansion would look like more students that are in facility, as well as being able to service more students that are already home. And we get into a whole bunch of different things with the ENET program, like as guys come home during the program, supporting them. I'm doing some research with a colleague of mine at Springfield Tech, and we I don't know how this is like, if like it feels UDL to me +1, and it's kind of like we're calling it the curated group, right? So like when students come to campus, they form these informal groups, right? Like before class, on breaks, like, hey, Karrie, how you doing? Oh my God, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling. And they get these support groups, right? And so we're trying to figure out how you do that in an asynchronous online class.
It's such an interesting idea, and it would be so helpful, especially if one of the biggest barriers in all online classes is that they don't feel close to their fellow students. So being able to figure out how to give these students the option to create their own group is such a great idea.
So if we could figure out like a self-selection type of, maybe it's like a survey, answer these survey questions, and we kind of, a match.com, right?
And this is where like UDL kind of just takes over our lives, because we're like, oh, how can we make this? Of course, so we want to just ask you the question, and now Karrie and I are both like, how can we help with this? Like, how can we help make this happen? Like, let's figure this out. So it's one of the best parts about, getting to talk with people who are in the, UDL group like
Yeah.
we all are, is being able to hear these ideas and then letting just all of the creative ideas start coming out. That's so amazing, and I can't wait to see how you and your colleague figure out how to do this so that we can all steal it from you.
No problem. We'd love to have it stolen. So
Well, then it ties into my other favorite topic of OER, right? Sharing the open resources, right? So here we go.
There you
Went
go.
from UDL to OER. We're good. So everybody wins.
If anything that Matt is saying now interests you, you should keep a lookout for the special edition that we will be recording at some point that he doesn't realize we've just signed him up for.
I mean, I don't know why you guys wanted me on here. Most people tune out as soon as I start talking. So
Nope.
that's why I learned to flip the classroom. I was like, they're not listening anyway. Like
I just am so thankful that you were able to take the time to meet with us and share all these wonderful ideas. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Matt. It was wonderful having you here with us today.
thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. And you guys, like, I love all the work that both of you are doing and to support UDL and OER and just the university in general. Like, you guys, both of you are amazing. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I like being amazing. You're amazing, Karrie.
I know. I like it. You're amazing, Dana.
Thanks.
You all know that. It's so obvious.